But Christians around the world are being brutally beaten, tortured, even killed, just for their faith in Jesus Christ. What will America do to protect them, if anything?
Well, that was the question before Congress on Wednesday as experts testified about the dangers religious believers can face. Heather Sells has that story.
On Capitol Hill, experts described a religious genocide in the Middle East. They highlighted Turkey, Pakistan, and Iran, where Pastor Saeed Abedini and 91 other Christians remain imprisoned for their faith.
Iran is silently suffocating the church. Even private worship comes at a heavy price.
At the hearing, ISIS was described as an organization as deadly as the Nazis with the same systematic approach.
There is a 9/11 every single day, and some days much worse.
Witnesses urged a renewed focus on religious freedom as a priority for foreign policy. They want the U.S. to withhold financial aid from the worst violators, and they're concerned the U.S. isn't doing a good enough job to protect religious liberty at home.
When we no longer make it a priority here domestically, that sends a message to bad actors abroad.
When Navy chaplains can't speak about their faith, when individuals are limited of what they can do in their business practices because of faith, when universities say you can be a part of a student organization only if you'll change your faith practice, we're downgrading our religious faith here in the United States.
The State Department's ambassador at large for international religious freedom, Rabbi David Saperstein, is new to the job and has a staff of just 20 operating in 16 countries. Appropriations Subcommittee Chair Lindsey Graham voiced support for increasing Saperstein's budget, which is scheduled to decrease with the next round of sequestration cuts. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, Jay Sekulow of the American Center for Law and Justice is with us now. He's coming via satellite from Nashville. Jay, you were there before Congress. What is America doing to help religious persecuted minorities?
Not enough, Pat. That's the truth. And I think the reality of what we're seeing on the ground, I know you're going to have a report later in the broadcast about Boko Haram joining now, of course, affiliating with ISIS. But it's not just ISIS. I mean, ISIS is doing horrible, despicable acts between crucifixions and beheadings. But let you take a look at Turkey, a NATO ally. You got the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, that's the head of the Greek Orthodox Church based in Istanbul, cannot leave his compound with any kind of clerical garb on. New theology schools cannot be opened. Older ones have been closed. Orphanages have been taken. Christians that were killed in a Bible bookstore slaying where the three owners of the Bible bookstore were brutally murdered. They're people that did the crime, these heinous acts, were just let go by the Turkish government. And this is a NATO ally. You take a look at Pakistan getting $2 billion of aid from the United States, and we've got Asia Bibi, a mother of 5, a Christian woman who is about to be hung for her faith. So this is, the United States has the ability to start including real sanctions if the governments don't comply with international treaties that they signed on to. And of course, the Saeed Abedini saga continues as our government's negotiating with Iran. Saeed Abedini still is sitting in jail. So I gave those 3 as the primary examples. We submitted much longer testimony, but my oral presentation, I focused on 3 countries, 2 of which are allies of the United States.
Well, the Saudis are supposed to be our close buddies in the Middle East, but I understand they have condemned to death somebody who changed the religion from Islam to something else, and that was a killing offense. What kind of a terrorist thing are we dealing with?
I think we're dealing with a threat, Pat, that we've not seen certainly in the last 50 years. I mean, I made the comment, they played it yesterday, that there's a 9/11 every day somewhere in the Middle East, and some days much more than a 9/11 as far as just the sheer number of casualties. But we're seeing an onslaught where these groups like ISIS, the non-state actors, combined with the state actors, are basically at will killing Christians. Hamas is killing Jews. Of course, that's their strategy. Hamas has opened up an office in Turkey, and you look at the situation, of course we know the funnel of Turkey was where ISIS, people that are joining ISIS are going right through Turkey. So Pat, you said it exactly correct. We're watching and witnessing an onslaught here, and I think we've got to step up. You know, Benjamin Disraeli had this quote that sometimes diplomacy can be war. And I think we've got to not only increase our military capabilities, but our diplomatic capabilities with our allies which basically gets it into a footing where they understand there's a consequence if you persecute people of faith. There's going to be a consequence with your dealings with the United States of America. But you can't lead from behind and do this, and that's the primary problem here.
Well, Pastor Ahmadini, of course, is in Iran. Iran is now leading the fight against ISIS in Iraq, and our government is applauding it, and they're winding up. There's a nice article in the Wall Street Journal today saying basically we're giving Iraq to them. They're going to take over vast swaths of Iraq.
Which is exactly, of course, what Shia-dominated Iran wants to do to, to Iraq. I mean, there is no doubt about this, Pat. I mean, when you look at Iran's, we did a piece a couple years back called The Export. This is exactly what we predicted would happen, that Iran would use its sophisticated military apparatus to export its version of global jihad. They have competition now because of ISIS, so you are going to have this kind of Islamic fight, but it's jihadist armies. I don't even call them terrorists anymore. These are jihadist armies you're talking about. And you're right. I don't know what deal we're going to sign with Iran, the United States. I can't imagine it's going to be a very good one. But meanwhile, with all these deals, Saeed Abedini's still in jail. So, talk about a lack of a confidence-building measure on behalf of the Iranians. But again, you look at our allies. They're doing things that are horrendous. You mentioned Saudi Arabia. I mean, you write something they don't like, you get your head cut off. I mean, this is not the way it's supposed to work. It's not the way. These governments have all signed, not the ISIS, obviously, but Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. They've signed all these international accords, all these international documents protecting religious freedom, human rights. It doesn't mean anything because there's no enforcement mechanism behind it, and we've got to start being that enforcement mechanism.
Well, let's face it, that center in Abbottabad was controlled by the Secret Service of Pakistan, and yet they were hiding the worst terrorist of all, Osama bin Laden, and he was essentially an open
across the street. Right. I mean, this is our ally, and the doctor that helped us capture Osama bin Laden, he gets picked up, and the United States response, from what we can tell, is non-existent. And this is Pakistan. They're getting billions of dollars of aid from the United States. So I understand why we give foreign aid, and I understand the complicated nature of the governments we're dealing with. I mean, I think you have to think nine-dimensionally here. But you've got an increasing ISIS threat coupled with a Hamas-Turkey coalition, and that's not healthy. You're looking at a jihadist army in the Middle East that we haven't seen since certainly since well before the Ottoman era. And I think, Pat, the reality is we've seen this play out in history before, and it doesn't play out well. The United States cannot lead from behind here. And on religious freedom, we have got to enforce it.
It breaks my heart to think that we have a man in charge of our foreign policy, in charge of our government, who seems to be sympathetic to Islam. I just can't believe it, and refuses to name it, refuses. And when Jews are killed at a kosher delicatessen, he said, well, some folks were shopping. I mean, this is just ridiculous.
But Pat, this is the worldview upon which the president's operating out of, and he has this narrative in the Middle East. It has not panned out right, and has not panned out well, that he was going to somehow go in there and get everybody to have a unity moment, and it did not happen. And not only did it not happen, the Middle East is in absolute chaos, the worst probably we've seen in our lifetime. And the fact of the matter is, and Pat, the president has to take responsibility here. He wanted to lead from behind. Well, we're paying for that result right now. The leading from behind. What is he held up? Yemen as the model country for democracy in the Middle East. We used to hold up Turkey. Look at what's happening with these governments. I mean, Turkey has become basically, ayatollahs in suits running the government. I mean, it's an Islamist government. And the fact of the matter is, I think we're being naive. But these are our allies. This is a NATO partner. And we're letting them get away with this. We're doing nothing. That has to stop. And that affects religious freedom significantly.
Thanks, Jay. We keep sounding the alarm, ladies and gentlemen. Hope and pray somebody will listen.